Fiat Puntos have a windscreen wiper arm mechanism which is a bit dodgy and prone to failure. If you start having problems with your windscreen wiper arms not working correctly, start to get a bit loose, they start to knock the scuttle panel, you may have the same problem. In my case, the driver's side windscreen wiper arm just stopped working completely after a few months of giving small problems, as you can see in this shot. It's a problem. The problem lies with the wiper arm linkages, which have very poor quality bearings. And if you look in this shot, you can see on the driver's side, the linkage is completely disconnected from the wiper arm spindle itself. What's happened is the bearing has worn to the point where it's so loose that it simply falls off. It's a ball and socket type joint, and it's placed upside down so that when it wears sufficiently, it simply falls off by gravity. As you can see here, I can push it off really easily. It shouldn't be this easy to push off. So what we're going to do is replace the arm linkages and introduce new aftermarket bearings, which are going to be better quality than the OEM ones. And there are companies which make aftermarket replacements. In this case, I am using a linkage set that I bought from a company in the UK called Wipex. I don't have any affiliation with them other than the fact that I've used them. In this case, there are other companies, but certainly their product in particular turned out to be good for my situation. So what we'll do now is we'll walk through the process of removing the linkages and replacing them. The first thing we need to do is remove the wiper arms, both sides. This is reasonably easy to do. You just need to firstly remove the little plastic cups which cover the nuts on top of the spindles. They can be quite stuck on there, so using the flat of a screwdriver blade or something similar can be helpful. After that, you will need a 13mm socket head for a socket wrench or a spanner, and remove the nuts on both sides again. And then the wiper arms are free and they will come off. However, they can be quite well stuck on there, especially if they haven't been removed before or recently. The trick to removing them is to push inwards about halfway along the wiper arm lengths where they flex. Give them a few pushes, rock the arm back and forward a little bit, and that will work the mating surface where it's stuck, and that'll loosen it and let you pull it off. And put all that safely to one side somewhere. Now just remember, when you go to put these back on, if you forget which is which, the longer wiper blade is the driver's side. The next thing to do is to remove the plastic scuttle panel which is at the base of the windscreen. That is held in place with only 3 screws, which are very easily accessible. You need a Phillips head screwdriver to undo them. And then once you've removed the screws, the panel will basically just pull out. This is actually probably the most awkward stage in the entire process. You need to be quite careful, as this panel will bend quite easily and you could end up damaging it. But with a bit of jiggery, it'll come out. And now we can see more clearly the wiper assembly. There is a plastic cover over top of the wiper motor which needs to be removed. That just pulls off. And then we can access the electrical plug, the electrical connection to the wiper motor. That's a very simple plug which you just disconnect. Now you will need a 10mm socket head or spanner to undo the bolts, and there are only 2 of them which hold the wiper linkage assembly in place. Undo and remove those, one on each side. Now these bolts have 2 sets of washers under each bolt head. There's a small sort of conventional washer, and then there's a large one which is under that, which will probably be stuck a little bit to the rubber on the linkage assembly. Be careful not to lose those. Then the whole assembly will pull out at this stage. You just lift it up and then push it backward relative to the car to push the little rubber plug at the base of the motor out from its hole, and then it'll be free and clear. And by the way, just as an aside, I found there was quite a lot of water which surprised me, which had accumulated at the bottom of this drain well area. And it turned out that the two drains at the bottom of it were completely blocked and not allowing water to drain out, at least not very quickly. So I recommend while you've got the scuttle panel off, just have a look at those drains and just give them a bit of a clean. Poke them with something if they are blocked and just free them up. And also, because it was there's just so much junk accumulated in the general area, I gave the whole well a bit of a clean. Just be careful with spraying water around with the electrics, obviously. And I also cleaned the scuttle panel itself, plus the wiper arm enclosure, just because it was so dirty in my case. Okay, here is the removed wiper and linkage assembly, and this is the a demonstration of the problem. This is the loose linkage. It's not supposed to be this easy to pop that off there, so that's what we're going to be replacing. Now, this one on the other side is interesting because it turned out that a previous owner of the car had apparently had the same problem before, and they'd fixed it by welding a washer on top of the ball part of the ball and socket, which you can see here. I've actually had to grind this off with an angle grinder so as to get access to it, and the whole thing was rusting and it was a complete mess. So we need to remove the old linkages, which we're going to be getting rid of. Obviously the ones that are loose will be easy to pull off. The ones that are not loose may be a little bit more difficult. I was able to simply leverage them, as you can see I'm doing here. The ones that are a bit harder, it helped to put something such as the end of a pair of pliers underneath the one end, and then you pull from the other and that levers it off. Even the ones that were not noticeably problematic were still much easier to pull off than the new ones are going to be to put on. So at this point, once you've got the arms off, I suggest you give everything a bit of a clean. I'm using some CRC or WD-40 here to clean the grease off, which somebody had placed on there before. Give it all a clean and then examine the condition of the balls. In my case, the plating on the balls had failed where the particularly loose bearings were beforehand. I assume that the loose bearings have just abraded it down over time, and then the steel underneath is starting to corrode. So I use some rust treatment, apply that, let it sit for a few hours or a day, even if you've got the time. Give it a light sanding, another coat to treat it finally, and then after that, once we're ready to put the new arms on, I sprayed the balls with a dry PTFE or Teflon grease, which sets up dry, so it should stay on there for a while. Give us a little bit of lubrication on the bearings and also protect us against further corrosion, hopefully. I also used some regular PTFE based grease to try to lube the interiors of both the spindles, both the wiper arm side and the linkage side, and also the internals of the wiper arm where the motor is itself. Right, now on to the fun part. This is where we get to put the new arms on. Now, the instructions which came from Wipex in the UK, in my case, were explicit in their numbering of the order in which to put these arms on. They look the same, but they're not. They're actually one's very slightly longer than the other. So do the order correctly. Now the bearings on these arms are a simple push fit, but that's a optimistic description of it if you interpret push to mean that you can do it simply with your own strength. Unless you've got much stronger fingers and hands than I do, there's no way that's going to happen. So I suggest using a pair of pliers. You may have some mold grips or something like that which would be better suited, but pliers worked fine for me. What you do is just use a rag or something to protect the plastic surface of the bearing so that you don't damage it with the pliers. Put it in position as shown here. Hold it down at the other side so that you don't lever it in a weird angle when you push down with the pliers, and then simply squeeze and it will pop on. You'll hear a click, and that's it, done. Do the others in order according to the instructions as we just talked about. And then the wiper assembly will be pretty much ready to put back in the car. This is just checking that it all works without any sort of interference. Turn the wiper motor arm and you can see that the wiper spindles turn correctly. And putting it back in the car is pretty much a reversal of its removal. Put the assembly back in its correct position. And maybe just before you start bolting up things, you might like to put the electrical plug back together and give it a bit of a test. When you do the electrical plug, by the way, spray it with some WD-40 or some other electrical spray which will repel moisture. That's always a good practice. And then you can action the wipers and just check that the linkages work correctly, that there's no strange noises, no strange motion. And once you're happy, we can reassemble everything else. Remember these washers which go underneath the bolts here. These are the wide ones I was talking about before, which you might not notice, and they might fall off the assembly and then you'd lose them. So make sure they're in place. Now this is some anti-seize compound. It's not a lubricant, it's an anti-seize. I like to put this on bolt threads and the like when reassembling stuff. The bolts in this car are all quite old, a little bit of corrosion starting to show. Things can seize up. Next time you want to remove them, you might have trouble. So I like to coat the threads with this stuff. Slows down corrosion and prevents seizing in the future. So once you've done those bolts, put the wiper cover back in place. It goes into position in the motion shown. And then the plastic scuttle panel, which is again just a reverse of its removal. Again, it's just as awkward to get into the correct position. You need to push it back as far as it wants to go. Make sure that the screw holes line up. And then you can put the screws in. Again, I'm using anti-seize here. And now it's finally time to put the wiper arms back on their spindles. I didn't clean them when I should have, when the assembly was removed from the car earlier. So here I'm just giving it a bit of a scrub and then a wipe down to remove the detritus and build-up that was on it from before. This is what makes the wiper arm stick, by the way. And again, to solve that problem in the future, going to cover the entire thing with anti-seize. This is the spindle where the wiper arm sits, plus where the bolt goes on the thread. Then you position the wiper arms in their resting position. This is important to get correct. If you allow them to sit too far down, then they're going to end up thwacking the scuttle panel when they're in motion. Conversely, if you have them too far up, then they will, especially the driver's side, one will go up and hit the side of the windscreen. So you need to get that right. It's just common sense as pictured. Then you can do the bolts up, tighten them. Put the rubber covers back on, don't forget to do that. And then you should be done. Check the wipers, run some water over the windscreen, and check that everything works okay. And as you can see in this case, it's practically as new. Well, so I hope that was helpful for at least somebody out there. Thanks for watching, and good luck.